Ever get that kind of like, I don't know, that urge to just totally immerse yourself in not one but two languages all at once?
Yeah, totally get that.
Like you're ready to just dive in head first. Well, we're going to tackle that big question a lot of you probably have. Can you actually learn two languages at the same time? And maybe more importantly, is it even a good idea? We've gone through, so much stuff for this deep dive.
Yeah, we really did.
Like expert opinions from Brainscape, Babbel, Preply. We've got insights from polyglots like Luca Lampariello, and even dug into some academic research to try and give you the best answer.
Absolutely. We're going to give you guys the best practical advice and clear up any confusion. So first things first, is it actually possible to learn two languages at once?
All right, like can our brains even handle that?
Well, most of the language learning platforms out there, they pretty much agree that, yeah, you can. They all kind of point to the brain's ability to like juggle a bunch of different things at the same time. Think of it like, back in school when you're learning like math and history and English all at the same time.
Yeah. So, okay, the brain can do it, but is it the same as like multitasking, where you end up doing a worse job at both things?
That's a great question. Even though you can learn two languages at once, you've got to be smart about it if you don't want to just spread yourself too thin.
Right.
There's some research out there, some of it from Reddit, actually, showing that learning Russian and English at the same time didn't mess up people's writing skills in English.
Huh.
It's kind of like a hint that if you do it right, it might actually even be good for you.
Okay.
But platforms like Babbel and Preply really emphasize, like, you got to have a plan.
Yeah, for sure. But we've also heard from some really experienced language learners who say, you got to be careful. What do they say about all this?
Yeah. So Luca Lampariello, he's a polyglot, super successful. He actually rarely recommends learning two brand new languages at the same time.
Right.
Story learning, they have this cool analogy. They compare new languages to fragile plants. Like they need a ton of attention if you want them to actually grow.
Yeah. Okay.
The big worry is that if you split your focus too much, you might not be able to do all the stuff you needed to do to get fluent, like keeping a solid routine, surrounding yourself with the language, all that.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like it might actually be tougher than it sounds. But what about all the good stuff?
Right.
Like all the brain benefits you hear about?
Yeah.
So all this language juggling actually like make you smarter?
Oh, it absolutely can. Think of it like, I don't know, like a brain workout or something.
Yeah.
When you learn two languages, it can seriously boost something called cognitive flexibility.
Okay.
Which is basically your brain's ability to like switch between different things and think in new ways. And when you strengthen that, it can make you way better at solving problems and maybe even make you more creative. There's even research from Penn State saying that bilinguals, they tend to have better working memory and can switch between tasks quicker.
Wow, like a brain upgrade. So what about the pitfalls?
Yeah.
What do we got to watch out for if we actually want to try this?
Well, the biggest thing you're going to run into is language interference. This is where languages that are similar, like Spanish and Portuguese, start to kind of blend together in your head, which can get confusing.
Yeah.
Sometimes people call that like portunhol.
Okay.
You're also probably going to need to spend way more time studying, and it might feel like you're learning slower at first. It can be really easy to get burned out, too, since you're using so much brain power, and honestly, it's really tempting to rush through the basics in both languages.
Right, yeah. So is there, like, a certain type of person who's more likely to succeed at this?
Yeah, actually, there are a few things that can help.
Yeah.
If you've already learned another language in the past, you've got a head start.
Makes sense.
You'll already have some strategies and stuff to use. If you're a beginner, it's usually better to pick languages that are completely different.
Okay.
Like Spanish and Japanese. Don't start off with similar languages, like Spanish and Italian.
Gotcha.
And of course, how much time you have is going to matter. But the most important thing is that you're really motivated to learn both languages.
Right, yeah.
And you have to have really clear goals for why you're learning.
That makes sense. So if someone actually decides to go for it, like what are some practical tips to help them succeed?
Honestly, the key is to be organized. You need to set aside specific times to study each language.
Yeah, okay.
And it's really helpful to use different learning methods for each language. That'll help you keep them separate in your mind.
Okay, cool.
If you happen to be learning languages that are similar, then you should actually compare and contrast them.
Oh.
You can even study the same topics in both languages. Just make sure you do it in separate study sessions.
Yeah.
And it's actually helpful to create completely different study spaces for each language.
Wow.
Even something as simple as using different colored notebooks can help.
Oh, interesting.
It sounds kind of silly, but it works. And, set realistic goals for yourself in each language and try to immerse yourself in each one separately. Don't jump back and forth while you're studying.
Yeah.
And, memory techniques, things like flashcards or spaced repetition, those can really help. And, of course, practice every single day.
Yeah, practice, practice, practice.
Exactly.
So it seems like motivation is super important here.
Definitely.
How do you stay excited about learning 2 different languages?
Well, on the one hand, it can actually be really exciting to have this challenge and variety. But on the other hand, it can also be really discouraging when it feels like you're not making much progress. So it really boils down to this. You have to be genuinely interested in both languages. And you can't have, crazy expectations about how fast you'll learn. Be realistic.
Makes sense. So, what's the actual learning process like?
Yeah.
Like if you were to compare it to just focusing on one language.
So at first, you might feel like you're learning fewer words in each language, but you'll actually be picking up on a lot of the same concepts. People who learn 2 languages at the same time, they tend to have really good receptive vocabulary, and they develop a natural feel for the grammar. But it might take a bit longer to learn all the super complicated grammar rules.
Yeah, okay.
If the writing systems are similar, then you might find that you learn to read and write faster.
Okay.
And remember all that stuff about bilinguals having advantages with brain power and stuff? Well, those advantages tend to be even stronger in people who learn 2 languages at the same time. But remember, this research is mostly based on kids, so it might not be exactly the same for adults.
That's a good point. So any last tips for people on choosing their languages?
So if you're a beginner, my advice is go for languages that are super different. That'll keep your brain from getting overloaded.
Okay.
And seriously, avoid similar languages when you're starting out. If you're more experienced, then you might already have the skills you need to handle similar languages.
So it sounds like ultimately the decision is up to each individual person.
Yeah.
You got to consider your learning style, your motivation, and of course, which languages you're actually interested in.
Exactly. So think about it. Which of those cognitive benefits, better mental flexibility, better multitasking, which of those stands out to you the most?
Yeah.
How do you think learning 2 languages would push you and help you grow? Maybe even look into something called the third language effect. That could be something interesting to explore as you figure out your next language learning adventure.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot to think about.
It is.
So thanks for diving into this with us.
Of course, it was my pleasure.
And all you language enthusiasts out there,
Happy learning.
happy learning.